ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም።
ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ
በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ይቻላል።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና
ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ከኢትዮጵያ ሲቪል አቪዬሽን ባለስልጣን ሙሉ ዕውቅና ባገኘንባቸው የፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን እና የሆስተስ ስልጠናም በምዝገባ ላይ ነን።
ጥያቄና መልስ፣ የክፍል ስራዎች ብሎም ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁ አይነት
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ
በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ
አድራሻ ከ22 ማዞሪያ ወደ ሾላ ገበያ በሚወስደው መንገድ 150 ሜትር ገባ ብሎ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።
Because now we are using the power is out. We are using a generator. It could go off also. So before we have talked about perfect and imperfect markets, the basis upon which this cause is best. Remember, last time I said there are two components that we shall look at: competition policy and regulation, economic regulation. Yeah, policy and regulation. Those are the key words in this course. So if you are searching for further material to read on Ethiopia or on this course, the key words are competition policy. The key phrases too, competition policy and secondly, economic regulation. So today I want to introduce competition policy. And if we have time, I can also introduce economic regulation. So I'll start with the competition policy. Just to tell you its definition. What is competition policy? What is the components of the competition policy for any country? Yeah? And as I told you, when you will be presenting your papers on Ethiopia, I will expect you to look at, some of you to look at competition policy of Ethiopia, give us its basis, how it's applied, success, failures of the thing, and how it helps Ethiopian government achieve its objectives, macroeconomic objectives. Yeah. So on competition policy, let's go to that. About 20 slides on this. So we are going to look at what's competition policy, what it covers, why do we need the competition policy in an economy, for an economy. Yeah. It could be at a national, regional, or global level. Why do we need these policies? Yeah. So this is what we are going to analyze and get to understand competition policy. So competition, as a word on its own, is a contestable situation where people fight for superiority. That's a literal meaning. Yeah, people compete. Yeah, there are many reasons. Yeah, as I was saying, there are many reasons why people compete for superiority. For market economy, competition is a process whereby firms fight against each other for securing consumers for their products. Because firms are in business to maximize profits. Yeah, that's the objective, profit maximization. And they do this by maximizing revenue and minimizing costs. Yeah, so revenue maximization and cost minimization. That allows them to maximize profits. Yeah. So how does a firm maximize its revenue? It's by increasing its sales. Because revenue is quantity sold times price, unit price. So to increase increase revenue, in most cases, you have to increase sales. You can also adjust price upwards to increase revenue. But as we saw last time, not all markets are able to adjust prices. Yeah, particularly in perfect market, firms are price takers. So they cannot manipulate prices. they are forced to change quantities either upwards or downwards, if depending on the objective, whether if they have to increase the revenue and they are not able to adjust prices, then they have to increase sales. So they will fight for consumers. So the more the consumers purchase from you, the more your sales go up. And therefore revenue goes up, assuming price held constant, particularly in a perfect market. So competition can be of two types: fair competition and unfair competition. So fair competition, here we produce quality goods. Commodities are of quality, they are cost efficient. We optimize use of resources. We adopt the best available technology, and we invest in research and development. So which means here, the firms engaged in this particular industry are undertaking fair competition. On the other hand, unfair competition, it includes practices like fixing prices with the rivals. Yeah, you take your rival, you agree, you collude to fix price. In most cases, upwards, so that you can increase your revenue. Yeah, with or without changing quantity sold. Another unfair, another practice that qualifies unfair competition is setting a price which is lower than cost in order to throw out competitors from the market. So you can find in the market, some markets, a firm may charge a price which is lower than cost, which means it can make losses, but calculated losses in the short run, knowing that competitors cannot withstand those losses for that period of time. They will go out of business. But this firm may be depending on its cost of production, it is surplus resources in the past. It may plan to withstand losses for a certain period of time. And they, according to their research, they may know that their rivals cannot withstand for a period of time. So they may throw their competitors out and remain in the market, and then now increase price to recover whatever they have lost over that period of time. Because there's no competition now, competitors were weeded out. And then, of course, another unfair practice is through advertising, persuasion. So I was saying this competition can be of two types: fair competition and unfair competition. So you can see the fair competition, the firms are doing what we expect them to do. Because I remember I told you, the whole business is to maximize welfare to society. And society consists of producers and consumers. Yeah. So if you produce good quality goods, you are being fair. I mean, that's fair competition, because you are not diluting quality. Yeah. You are efficiently producing. You are not using resources, inputs, and inefficiently. Yeah, you are optimizing the use of your resources. You are using the best technology possible. You are not using stale technology, obsolete technology, and therefore passing over unfair costs to your consumers. And also, you are doing research and development. So, types of competition. You can have price competition and non-price competition in the market. So competition among suppliers to win consumers by offering lower price, that's price competition. May not be an appropriate strategy for those loyal to a particular brand. Yeah. So here you adjust prices to compete. You can always lower your price to compete your rivals. So that's price competition. And then price competition is competition to win customers. It's competition to win customers, not by lowering the price, but by advertising. Yeah. Offering after-sales service, using sales promotion tools. So this one, you don't use price, but you use other techniques for competing. Normally is advertisement, promotion, persuasion, yeah, promising that if you buy my product, I will always give you service afterwards. What we normally call a guarantee period. You know, those are not those are ways of luring customers to you, but you are not adjusting your price. That's 9 price competition. So there are forms of market competition there. We saw them last time. Yeah? Perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. So I'm not going into the details. We looked at them last time. Then for the oligopoly market, we saw the definitions last time. Then for competition policy itself now, competition policy or law, competition policy, government measures directly affecting both farm behavior and industrial structure. So what we mean by competition policy, we have looked at competition itself, types of competition. But now what's competition policy or what's competition law? Yeah, some books will call it competition law, others competition policy. So we are saying these are measures put in government to control farm behavior and industry behavior, yeah, or industry structure. Remember I said industry is made of many farms. Farms make an industry. So a farm, when it's alone in an industry, it's a monopoly. When there are 2 farms in an industry, it's a duopoly. When there are a few farms in an industry, it's oligopoly. But when there are many farms in industry, it's perfect competition, tending towards perfect competition. So the government measures to control farm behavior and the structure of the industry is what we refer to as competition policy or competition law. So competition policy includes economic policies and competition law. So economic policies adopted by government that enhance competition in local and national markets. Economic policies adopted by government that enhance competition in local and national markets. While competition law is designed to stop anti-competitive business practices. So economic policies enhance competition, but competition law stops anti-competitive business practices. So you can see economic policies is like competition law is designed to stop competitive business practices. Yeah. So economic policies adopted by government that enhance competition in local and national markets. And the competition law is designed to stop uncompetitive business practices. So there are, those are 2 components of competitive policy: economic policy and competition law. So let's look at the components of competition policy. So there is competition law, as we have seen, and there's the government policies. Yeah, remember, government policies, what we are referring to as economic policies, and the competition law is designed to stop uncompetitive practices. So under competition law, we have private actions. Yeah? Private actions against individual firms. But under government policy, we have regulation and privatization, industrial policy, trade policy, consumer policy are all under government policies. Trade policy, regulation governing capital and financial and FDIs, yeah? Inflows from outside and other policies. So under government policies to stop and practices and competition practices, you can see there are about how many categories? 6 categories. Yeah, mainly 5. So we'll be asking you, what is the competition law of Ethiopia? That's to encourage to stop and competitive practices. And then what is the government? What are the government policies? Yeah, to encourage competition. Yeah? Meant to encourage competition. So we would ask you, what are the deregulation and privatization policies of Uganda? What is the industrial policy, of Ethiopia? What is the consumer policy for Ethiopia? What is the trade policy for Ethiopia? What is the policy regulating capital inflows into Ethiopia? And then other policies that the Ethiopia may have. So use this structure to search for good papers in this area that have been published. Yeah, there are papers which will talk about competition law of Ethiopia. There are papers which will talk about government policies, particularly the regulation of privatization. Yeah, industrial policy, consumer policy, trade policy, regulations governing foreign direct inflows. So that's a structure that summarizes what we shall be doing in this course actually. This is the structure of the whole course that we have before us to complete. And this should guide you, search for necessary literature, either the theories that guide this and the practices by Ethiopian government. Of course, when you look at a policy by Ethiopian government, I expect you to explain why it's in place using the theoretical basis, economics of markets. And of course, you should be able to assess its impact, positive or negative, and whether its net effect is increases the welfare of Ethiopian society or not. And then, of course, give us a way forward. How should the policy be remodeled or redesigned to achieve the desired goals? So under competition law, and I said law is supposed to stop and competitive practices. Here we look at anti-competitive agreements between firms, collusions. Firms collude, but I believe there are few in the industry. They collude because they come to agree that there's no need of competing amongst ourselves. It's collude. Let's agree. That's what they call anti-competitive agreements. So the firms collude, not for the sake of, in other words, they are doing something that's against the consumer interests, society interests. Yeah. Then also we have another category of why competition law, what a competition law addresses is abuse of dominant market position. If you're a dominant firm in the market, you should do it responsibly. You should operate responsibly. But also you can abuse that position. For instance, many government agencies like supply of electricity, supply of water, these things that are natural monopolies, sometimes they can abuse their market position. Yeah. Then regulation of mergers. Yeah, firms can also merge. So regulation of mergers to prevent tactics to gain excessive dominance in the market. So again, apart from agreements, we have the issue of mergers. Yeah, firms who are in the industry competing for of course, the society benefits when they compete, consumer benefits, but they decided to merge so as to increase their benefits from the market at the expense of the consumer, and ultimately maybe at the expense of society. Yeah. So under the competitive agreements, we have things like import cartels, price fixing, market sharing, bid rigging, limiting production, refusal to buy or supply, tie-in arrangements, exclusive dealing, resale price maintenance, territorial allocation. So these are agreements that farms can enter into to collude. These are collusions, yeah, which is against the competition law of many countries. Most countries, of course, almost all countries, these are practices that reduce the gains the society gets from such markets. Yeah. Because this collusion are meant to hold society and consumers at ransom. Yeah. When you limit production, you see you are trying to influence the price, to create scarcity, yeah, fairly, yeah, sharing market, yeah, so that you agree, your market is this, my market is this, so we should not compete because we have already shared the market. Don't produce more than this. I will not produce more than this at any given time or during this time. So we shall not. So you agree on how to share the market. So you cannot compete. Yeah, those are competitive agreements. Fixing price, territorial allocations. So these are the anti-competitive agreement that the competition law addresses. Competition law also, as I've said, that this addresses abuse of dominant market position, predatory pricing, price discrimination. Yeah, you have heard of price discrimination monopolist or described price discriminating monopolist, excessive pricing, abuse of intellectual property monopoly. Yeah. So these are, again, issues that the competition law addresses. Yeah. Price discrimination is common, yeah, whereby the same quality of goods and services you sell at different prices. In other words, you take advantage of elastic differences, demand elastic differences in the market. Yeah. You price highly. Yeah. You misuse your intellectual property. Yeah. And pricing that weeds out your colleagues or your competitors. Then the regulation of miners to prevent tax to gain excessive dominance applies total unification of the companies involved. So the companies the businesses, the farms may collude and unify, buying of sufficient shares in a company so as to have a say in policy formulation. So one farm can buy shares in another one so that it influences the decision they make. So they cannot compete. If you as a farm, you have shares in your competitor's structure. Your competitor, you now know what goes on inside there. And you can influence decisions inside so that they favor you outside. So competition is killed. So these are things that the competition law addresses. Yeah. Competition law addresses practices that are anti-competitive practices. That's what it addresses. And competitive practices. And these are the three types of anti-competitive practices. Yeah, three main types of anti-competitive prices, and under each, you know the type of practices that we have. So you can read a lot of literature on import cartels, price fixing, market sharing, price discrimination, buying of sufficient shares. So this is a whole topic on its own that you can gather literature and read on that perspective. So the three stages of provisions that a competitive law constitutes: the behavior and structure of firms in the market, institutional enforcement design with the competition authority, competition advocacy. So in many countries we have competition, the government has put in place agencies, authorities, bodies to check on competition amongst firms in a particular market. In other words, there's an institutional and enforcement authority in a particular country. So check out this on Ethiopia, competition authority that monitors, evaluates, and controls competition practices in the economy. And particularly also looks things to do the behavior and structure of firms. The structuring of firms also matters because, as I've told you, some can buy shares in another one. So they are very cunning. You must have full knowledge, understanding of the operations to be able to identify anti-competitive practices. And of course, the whole thing is to advocate for competition. Competition is healthy, and it makes society and consumers benefit. It increases their welfare. So what are the benefits of competition policy then? Because I told you competition policy, as we look at it under two arrangements, competition law and economic regulation. Or government policies. So there's competition law and government policies, government economic policies or regulation, regulatory policies. So benefits to consumers, a fair deal in the marketplace with the best possible choice of quality. So customers are assured of quality. They're assured of lowest possible prices that gives normal profits to the farms. Of course, the farms must earn normal profit because, as I told you earlier, profits are a reward to risk takers. The risk takers can make losses or make profits. Yeah. So the reward for taking that risk is the normal profits that you get. So the lowest possible price, of course, it assumes that normal profits are already taken care of. And then, of course, thirdly, the benefits to consumer is adequate supplies of commodities. Yeah? There's enough supply of commodities, depending on either during over a period of time or over spatial geographical location, both in space and time. Yeah? There's adequate supplies of commodities. So this benefits the consumer gets because of the competition policy that's in place that encourages competition, 1, 2, discourages anti-competitive practices. Yeah. When it discourages anti-competitive practices, competition law. It encourages competition, government economic regulation. How about benefits to
በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ ኤምቢኤ በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ ኤምቢኤ በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ ኤምቢኤ በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ ኤምቢኤ በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ ኤምኤስሲ በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ በመጀመሪያ ዲግሪ በአቪዬሽን ማኔጅመንት፣ በሆቴል ማኔጅመንት፣ በአካውንቲንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ በማርኬቲንግ ማኔጅመንት አስተማማኝ ትምህርት ይገቢውና ራስዎንና ሀገሮን ይለውጡ። አድራሻ 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።
Producers now, this is a competition policy. What's the benefit? It's a safeguard against practices that could drive companies out of business, particularly those that are efficient. They are guided, they are protected from aggressive firms that don't care about the welfare of consumer society. So those farms that care, those farms that undertake fair practices are protected by the competition policy of a country. It also ensures lower entry barriers to promote entrepreneurship and growth of small and medium enterprises. So this competition policy also produces, it guarantees lower entry barriers. So if the policy is not there, the existing firms in the industry will erect high barriers, barriers that are difficult or do not allow others to join in the industry. They will kill entrepreneurship in the economy. The small and medium scale enterprises will not grow because the existing firms erect barriers. So competition policy guarantees reasonable entry points to starters or those firms that undertake fair practices. It also allows efficient allocation and utilization of resources. Yeah. So efficient allocation and utilization of resources. So resources are used efficiently, labor, land, and capital. Yeah. You don't have 10 acres of land, but you're only using 2. The rest are idle. That's inefficient allocation of resources, inefficient utilization of resources. So efficiency in allocation and utilization is what this ensures more output and employment. So there will be greater output by the farms, and to produce more output, they will employ more people. So output goes up, and consequently, employment also goes up. And then it controls international and fair competition. So national businesses, farms are protected from international and fair competition, particularly international cartels on the global scene. Yeah? They can sink national farms in the industry by using unfair competition. Maybe they are financed or partly financed by their governments or by other groups in their countries, and then they move in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian farms will not be competing fair, they will meet unfair competition from such farms. So to control international fair competition policy is necessary. So on the whole, we can say competition policy maintains and promotes the competitive spirit and culture in the market. Competition policy maintains and promotes the competitive spirit and culture in the market. So we need the competition policy to monitor, prevent, and control anti-competitive practices and competitive practices. So what are the arguments against competition? Arguments against competition. So, that everything has a positive and negative side. So if we allow competition, we have seen the positive sides, both to the producer and the consumer. How about the negative sides? So this prevents formation of large farms, or preventing formation of large farms may reduce efficiency. The situation arises when there exists significant economies of scale. In some cases, society, consumers may gain if we have a large-scale production of goods and services, because large-scale production allows that farm or those farms to enjoy economies of scale. And if you enjoy economies of scale, we expect costs per unit produced to go down. And if the price per unit produced goes down, the price is likely to be lower than before. And if the price is lower, the consumer benefits and society benefits from those resources. So if you put competition, if you encourage competition in the face of particular natural monopolies, you may injure society. Yeah. You reduce efficiency, and hence society welfare is affected. Particularly where we are talking of infrastructure projects, power and railways. Now, assuming there are many companies, railway companies in Addis Ababa, or power companies in Addis Ababa, there will be many power lines, red, green, blue, depending on the company. So you can see the mess that will be in that particular city. Or railways, different companies with their own railways. So you see, but if you have one big company to run the whole of Addis Ababa power system or railway system, the cost of production go down. And hence price, and hence consumer benefits and society benefits. So that's an argument against competition. So competition might be counterproductive, leading to inefficiency, especially when goods and services tend to be homogeneous. Yeah. So when the good produce homogeneous, if you continue allowing competition, it may lead to inefficiency. Policy actions against highly profitable farms would work against the development of dynamic and thriving farms. So you will kill the spirits of the big farms, dynamic farms that want to grow, because you feel that they are going to own the market, control the market. So you develop competition policies against them. See, these are highly profitable farms that should be allowed to grow. Overregulation could increase cost of operation and generates inefficiency. Yeah? So also if you overregulate, yeah, the cost of production for farms may go up. And if cost of operation goes up, prices have to go up. And if prices go up, the consumer suffer. Yeah? The consumer welfare is affected, and hence society. So, encouraging and preventing and competitive practices should be done in moderation. Yeah. So the policy put in place, the law put in place, the regulations put in place should take both sides into account. The positive sides of competition and the negative sides of competition, so that you come up with something that is balanced, a policy that is balanced. And this is what we shall be looking at. The policies in Ethiopia, are they balanced when you look at both sides? Yeah. At the end of the day, we want to encourage efficiency, more welfare, greater welfare, through lower prices, lower cost of production. That's at the end, that's what we want. How do we reach there? Yeah. That's encouraging competition, full plus, to make us reach there. We have to look at the negative aspects of negative side of competition. So that's what I have to say about the background to the policies that we shall be looking at. The competition policy, as which we have seen clearly we have said is government measures directly affecting both farm behavior and industrial structure. And we have said competition policy should include two things: economic policies, government economic policies that enhance competition, and competition law designed to stop anti-competitive business practices. Those two components. Stopping anti-competitive business practices is competition law. Encouraging, enhancing competition, and government economic policies, regulation practices. or regulations that the government puts in, government regulatory policies, economic policies. So with that background now, you now have the full understanding of the direction the course takes us. Yeah. So again, I'll repeat, what is the competition policy in Uganda, in Ethiopia? Under that, what's the competition law? And what are the government economic policies, regulatory policies? And we have seen the negative and positive sides of competition. We have seen the objectives the government has. Welfare for society is the ultimate goal. Yeah. But we know from theory that the higher the competition, the higher the welfare. But we have seen in some cases, competition may be anti-productive. It may be anti-society in terms of welfare. Yeah. So we have to get a balanced policy, we have balanced law, balanced regulatory policies to make us achieve the highest welfare for society. Okay, if there's any question? Yeah, so as I said, there are two parts, two components to competition policy. There's the competition law and then the economic regulation. Yeah, so I intended the next time we meet on Tuesday, we go to the details of economic regulation. So for now, I wanted to open up that one so that you can read ahead on the two branches of competition policy. Competition law that stops anti-competitive practices. And then the economic regulation that encourages competition. Yeah. So economic or government economic regulations encourage competition. Competition law discourages anti-competitive practices. And we have seen the types of anti-competitive practices. I gave you a chart that gives the details and the types of anti-competitive practices that we should guide you in your literature search, in reading ahead, and in getting journal papers that you'll present, particularly with reference to Ethiopia. Yeah. Remember, at the end of the day, we shall be giving our views on how to improve the competition policy of Ethiopia. So you must, first of all, get to know, is there a competition policy? What is the competition policy? And then there are parameters against which we shall assess that one. And I've given you the things we shall be looking at, both the negative and the positive aspects of competition. Yeah. And of course, you know, we are operating in different markets, yeah, as we saw last time. So here, next time, I intended to go through the economic regulation. There will be the key learning objectives that we shall go through. Forms of industry regulation. Yeah. Regulation of natural monopolies. Natural monopolies with all things like power supply, water supply, transport, railway systems, roads. Yeah. Definition of natural monopolies, we shall go through that. Why regulate natural monopoly? Profit maximization and regulation through marginal costing pricing. Profit maximization regulation through marginal cost pricing, average cost pricing. Yeah. You know, we regulate through we use many strategies to regulate the market. So there are others based on marginal cost pricing principles, average cost pricing principles. Then we shall also look at regulating non-monopolistic industries, yeah, that we saw last time. Regulating non-monopolistic industries. Then we shall look at the issue of social regulation, because this was economic regulation, there's also social regulation. Yeah, you can also regulate competition through social regulation strategies. You have seen some things like mostly in developed countries, whereby you must tell consumers to what extent you have used artificial or synthetic inputs. It must be on the packaging. So they check that. If they find you have not used natural, environmentally sustainable techniques or production methods, they will boycott your goods. Yeah. So these are social regulation strategies, as you shall see later on, where consumer awareness is very high. Yeah. In some countries, even they want to know, how are workers in your industry paid? Are they getting fair pay for their work? Are they working in an environment that is friendly, human environment? You know, in some kind of flower businesses, a lot of pesticides. Are they controlled? Do you take care of your workers in such an environment? You have to indicate. If not, then so we shall see many ways of doing this. Yeah, in incentives and costs of regulation. Yeah, you know, there are benefits and the benefits of this, as we saw under competition, incentives and cost of regulation. Of course, the government regulates their costs in cars. So you also don't want the cost of regulating to be high for the economy. Cost of regulation, we shall look at antitrust policy. Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 is a good case that we use to understand some of the policies that the government has put in place, because the government normally refers to some of these cases, some of these acts, some even 200 years old, to make its decisions. Yeah, Clayton Act, Robinson-Patman Act. These are antitrust policies we shall look at. Exemptions, yeah, like labor unions and what have you. Then antitrust enforcements, monopolization, yeah, monopoly power and the relevant market, monopoly power and the relevant antitrust enforcement, product versioning, product bundling, software version, enforcing antitrust. We shall look at that also in detail. Then basics of trade and regulation, yeah, because trade also, like global trade, you could be making your farms competitive internally within the country, but they are trading. The economy is trading with the other farms outside your country that are not having the same policies. So what happens here? The issue of comparative advantage. Yeah. So this is what we shall look at in detail on Tuesday. Yeah? Economic regulations. So we shall distinguish between economic regulation and social regulation. Recognize practical difficulties that arise when regulating the prices charged by natural monopolies. Identify potential benefits and possible negative side effects of social regulation. Understand the foundation of antitrust laws and regulation. So this is what we will capture, so we shall focus on Tuesday. For today, it was just to introduce that issue of competition policy, competition law, and government economic regulation. So again, I will send slides. I hope some of you at least confirmed you received the slides on Tuesday.
Yes, I confirm it.
On Tuesday, you received my slides.
Yeah.
And on Thursday last week, you received the main textbook that we're using.
Yeah, I sent a confirmation.
Yeah, some of you sent 2, I think. The others didn't send. So I hope you could confirm with your colleagues if they received. If not, please share.
Okay.
Yeah, the main textbook and the slides that I've been sending. So I'd also send slides later in the day. When I reach home, I'm actually outside home because there's power was a problem there. So I came to the nearest marketing center to utilize stable internet connectivity. Okay, if there's no question, comment, let's meet on Tuesday and we shall be discussing economic regulation, government, economic regulatory practices.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then afterwards we shall look at details of competition law. And the two make up competition policy for government. So meanwhile, please search on the literature, particularly to do with the Ethiopia government policies. Yeah, in this
I
regard.
got a document now from internet. A
Yeah?
review about. I got a document on
Yes.
which reviews the Ethiopian competition policy. Which
competition policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you can do. Yeah, what you can do, you can send it to all your colleagues and copy me in. Copy me in.
I'll send it to you.
Huh?
I'll copy it to you.
Yeah, you say you copy to me and also send to your colleagues.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the competition policy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It includes the 2 components, competition law and regulatory. Yeah.
It is a review on Ethiopia's competition policy.
How old is it? When was it put up?
You can get on internet and you can Google it. It was prepared by UNICTAD.
Which year? Which year?
Year. Let me check the year. Wait a moment, please.
Okay.
It says a review of Ethiopian competition policy in Ethiopia, 2014, December.
2013.
2014, 14.
14.
Yeah.
That is about 6 years old.
Yeah, some 6 years old.
Yeah, just confirm also which ministry in Ethiopia will be doing this? Ministry of Finance?
No, UNICTAD. You know UNICTAD? United Nations.
UNCTAD did that, but they were reviewing UN something trade and development, yeah? Yeah, but they're reviewing it. But which document were they reviewing? You also have that document they're reviewing.
No, I didn't select any document, but I got this document from internet.
Yeah, you can also, meanwhile, and your colleagues be searching the document that the UNCTAD was reviewing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good to have both. They could have reviewed in their own interest. Huh? So it's good to have the document and the UNCTAD document also.
Yeah, I can send it to you and to my colleagues also.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is printed. Printed in 2018. The document says 2018 at the forefront. It says New York and Geneva 2018. 2018, it says.
So about 2 years old?
Yeah.
Okay, just send it to see. But which ministry will be in charge of competition law in Ethiopia? Which government agency?
Ministry of Trade. Maybe, but I'm not sure.
Which one?
Ministry of Trade.
Minister of Trade. And do you have competition authority in Ethiopia?
We have an institution which is under Ministry of Trade, but I'm not sure whether it is working on that issue.
Okay, because in Kenya now we have Competition Authority of Kenya.
Maybe these organizations will be under Ministry of Trade. There may be an organization under the Ministry of Trade which will be responsible for such issues.
Can you check for us?
I can check it tomorrow.
Yeah, check it tomorrow, and if there's any documents, please share.
Okay, let me try.
Yeah, so it's good to know this because it's good to, we are doing something based on textbooks, but it's good related to the practical aspects of theory. Yeah, because your thesis will be based on practical things.
Yeah.
So please, not only you, the others should also be searching. If you have any good literature that's related to what I've discussed today, please share to the group and copy me in.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're on the ground, you know what's going on. Some of you work in those ministries or those government agencies. So we should get the latest. Even if there are amendments, we should know what has amended, because it could be made maybe 5 years old, but the government keeps on amending. So we also need to capture the amendment so that we know the current status of competition in Ethiopian economy.
Let me try, and I will let you know. Let me try to get all documents from the ministry.
Yes,
and
yes.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, and particularly also find out if they have a special agency, special authority, special board, or special institution that looks at competition in Ethiopia under the ministry. Yeah. Yeah, so if they have the website, you can share the website so that we can check the website ourselves for the document.
Yeah, I'll share the website of the ministry. Today I can share you.
Okay.
But let me ask my friends there in the ministry. If there is any body who is in charge of competition policy, and let me try to share you the documents or the messages that I can get from them.
Okay. Okay. Then the slides I sent last week on Tuesday, any question on them? Did you follow the graphs?
Yeah, but especially I didn't see deeply. I didn't see deeply. I didn't.
You didn't see? You didn't see?
I saw it, but I didn't study all the slides.
Okay, so try to use the weekend to go through them. So if there's any table, any graph that you don't understand, I can go over it, because we are going to use the graphs to explain certain practices in the Ethiopian economy. Because when you analyze a policy, we saw there are many components of a policy. If you analyze any of them, you should start from the theoretical basis first. The theory says this, and this is what we do in practice. So how do we improve what we do in practice to meet what the theory says? That's our research problem, isn't it? That's what we mean by research problem. The theory tells you what should happen in a perfect situation. But what happens in practice is a departure. So how do we reduce that gap? That's our research problem. So when you come to your thesis, those are the issues we'll be looking at. We shall ask you what your research problem for your project, your thesis. Okay, have a good day.
Thank you.
We meet on Tuesday.
Okay. See you.
ልዩነት መፍጠር ዓላማችን ነው። ዓለም አቀፍ ተወዳዳሪ መሆን አለባችሁ። የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ጥራትና ደረጃውን የጠበቀ ስልጠና በመስጠት ብቁ ዜጋ እያፈራን ነው። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን፣ በበረራ መስተንግዶ፣ በቲኬቲንግና ሪዘርቬሽን፣ በሆቴልና ቱሪዝም ሙያዎች አሰልጥነን ተወዳዳሪ እናደርጎታለን። ኮሌጃችን ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ICM ጋር በመተባበር ዓለም አቀፍ እውቅና ያለው ስልጠና እየሰጠ ይገኛል። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን፣ በበረራ መስተንግዶ የምንሰጣቸው ስልጠና ከኢትዮጵያ ሲቪል አቪዬሽን ባለስልጣን ሙሉ እውቅና አለው። አድራሻ ከጎላጉል ታወር 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።